Hey, welcome back to Trek on the Tube, and welcome back to another Star Trek season review. Today we're talking about Star Trek Picard Season 2, and boy oh boy is there a lot to talk about. Although if I'm being brutally honest, I don't really necessarily want to talk about it at all. But hey, maybe writing about it, maybe filming this, editing the video, maybe all of that, putting thoughts to paper will help me reconsider a few of my opinions. No. For starters, a little warning, I guess. This probably isn't going to be the most positive of reviews I've ever done, so if you feel like that's going to upset you, do not proceed. Bear in mind, however, it is not my mission to try and change your mind or purposefully alienate you if you indeed did enjoy the season. I'm not trying to take away from your enjoyment. This really is just me documenting my own thoughts as of now. Oh, and as usual, there will be spoilers. So yeah, just like the most recent season of Discovery, I found this season of Picard to be quite boring, and I'd say that's probably its greatest flaw. Sadly though, in addition to this general nothingness unfolding on screen week to week, was paired an assortment of wildly incoherent and ultimately difficult to digest, convoluted plot points, and so an experience that could have been at worst bland and flavorless rather turned into something so hard to stomach that there was even an episode I quite literally had to stop watching the first time around. I had to take a break from it and finish it later. Now believe me, between Inhumans, the later seasons of Arrow, or the dreadful seasons of La Casa de Papel, I have lived through some intensely energy-draining television, and though Picard Season 2 doesn't quite match their simply legendary delivery of clumped fatigue, it sure as hell gives them a run for their money. The saving grace for Picard being the performances as opposed to the other shows we just mentioned. Enough vagueness though, let's start talking specifics. Now, some of you probably know this already, but I'm not one to do recaps for the shows that I review, and this is mostly because I assume that we've all seen what it is that we're talking about and spoiling, but I feel like an exception must be made this time around, just so that we can try and make more sense of what we saw. So, when it comes to the story, from what I gather, in essence, what happened was, after a year-long time skip, Picard and his motley crew in present time find themselves in presence of an immensely destructive spatial anomaly, before then being joined by a vagina-looking Borg vessel and a bizarre-looking Borg queen. Before anything else has time to happen, Q sweeps in and sends the poor individuals to an alternate timeline, not quite mirror universe, but definitely resembling, where all our characters are very unsettled. It's explained that somewhere or sometime something happened in this timeline's past, and so the crew slingshot themselves around the sun to a point in said past right before the singular event that will cause the irreversible change in the timeline. They do this by stealing a Borg queen because she's the only one that can do the calculations necessary for the slingshot. Once they arrive in this alternate but not alternate past, it's then established that Picard and gang must protect one of his ancestors because she was an astronaut that made a historical discovery on a mission to Europa. They do so by teaming up with a Watcher that turns out to be some sort of agent put in place by the Travelers, aka Wesley Crusher and that weird dude from The Next Generation. They also ask Guinan for some help. She tries to by screaming a drink into Picard's face to summon a cube, but that doesn't work. Also, a Sung ancestor wants to be remembered, so he decides to sabotage the Europa mission. Also, Jurati and the Borg Queen merge together because they both needed a friend. Meanwhile, Picard faces his demons, which are his mother's mental issues and his father's very puerile handling of them, which ultimately led to her suicide. Q then pops back up, tells Picard he's actually a immortal being, and explains he did all of this time travel bullshit just to help Picard get some closure before he then dies. Q also wants a hug. They get snapped back into the present, except for Rios, who fell in love and stayed behind. It's revealed that the vagina ship Borg Queen is Agnes, and she also needs a hug. The Borg become Federation honorary members and terminate the spatial anomaly. But not entirely, because we get a line teasing the arrival of something bigger.
What you see is a piece of the puzzle whose final image is unclear, but is tied to a threat. One which requires close observation.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
probably some sort of crossover event. I'm assuming a Star Trek Discovery Paramount Plus streaming film with cameos from other shows, making it some sort of Avengers type team up with like a multi-dimensional multiverse kind of enemy, but that's speculation. Believe me, I made that sound a lot better than it actually is. Which I feel like is part of the problem. Most of Season 2 works better on paper than it does in execution. I mean, there's social commentary, action, romance, character development, lore expansion, new characters, returning characters, sci-fi concepts, everything you'd expect and need from a Star Trek show. So why did it go wrong? How did it go so wrong? To begin with, the story itself lacked clarity, or honestly, any clear sense of direction. One of the reasons for that is that most of the characters' objectives were in actuality quite odd. Q, in his dying moments, realized that he was fine with dying, but thought about Picard and his childhood, so he decided to send him to the past in order to help him get closure. But this was also linked, for some reason, to the fact that present-day Borg Queen needs to be trusted by Picard, so Q wants to make him witness Agnes and the Queen's merging, I guess? I don't know. Speaking of Agnes Queen, her objective is pretty clear. She needs to get to the ship and leave Earth, but in order to do so, she ends up recruiting the help of Sung, which doesn't seem necessary at all. Sung, on his side of things, wants to sabotage the Europa mission in order to secure his own legendary status in the evil future that will come following his actions. That desire kind of falls apart, though, when you realize that Sung's horrible future is the one in which the Borg are entirely decimated. So technically, even if Sung would still want to be remembered, it would be better for the Queen to kill him and ensure the successful mission of Rene Picard so that the collective doesn't get decimated. Look, you get the point. This thing is riddled with plot holes and malfunctioning story elements, big and small. I mean, we just started exploring the tip of the iceberg here, and there's already 3 or 4 stories and character, motivations that are very, very odd. But I mean, we can look at the details as well if you want, like the ship, La Serena, having no power for heat, but still having enough power for the cloaking device. I mean, what? Come on. Clearly a cloaking device would take up more power than a goddamn heater, but anyway, going over all of these would honestly be very trying, and pretty much akin opening a Pandora's box. So putting the plot aside for a second, let's take a look at some of the more technical aspects of the show. Every performance, as I mentioned in the beginning, in my opinion, was solid, with special shoutouts to Alison Pill and Annie Wershing for delivering some fantastic Borg Queen and Agnes moments. But it's not just them. I do think Rios and his love interest had chemistry, and most of their scenes were a breath of fresh air, though apparently I may be alone on that hill. Brent Spiner as the somewhat mustache-twirling mad scientist, once again, did a good job. And you know what? I'll even shout out the new actor portraying the alternate/younger, I don't know, Guinan, for doing her best at balancing both her own unique performance and a few of the Whoopi Goldberg inflections from The Next Generation. So Patrick Stewart, sadly, much like Season 1, I was not convinced by. I'm pretty sure everyone will agree with me here when I say that Sir Patrick Stewart's acting talents know no bounds, and he has proven himself time and time again in so many films, on stage, etc. He's an absolute legend. It's not his ability to act that I'm questioning here, rather his choices, or the choices of whoever's calling the shots. In Season 1 and in Season 2, with perhaps the exception of the second season's first episode, Picard doesn't feel like Picard. He feels like Sir Patrick Stewart. And I know the character is older, I understand that he has changed, but look at Logan. Sir Patrick Stewart delivered a decrepit, mentally unstable, dying Professor X that still felt like the character from the original films. In Picard, however, there's a character choice being made that just doesn't work for me. It is difficult to pinpoint exactly what it is, but one of the contributing factors is for certain the dialogue. I mean, that dialogue doesn't help. The dialogue across the entire season is like mid at best, flip-flopping between romanticized poetry to contemporary slang. It never really feels like the formal, more baseline language approach that we've seen these characters and others use in Star Trek of the past. Like, Picard doesn't say guys. He doesn't say, we're on a mission, guys. Maybe, like, I'm not saying the slang word would disappear entirely, maybe some rando dude on a planet out there, you know, he would say it. Maybe some miner on a miner colony. He's going to say swear words. He's going to speak a little more like we do today. It's going to feel a little more contemporary, but not Jean-Luc Picard. He doesn't speak like that. He doesn't talk like that. And it feels severely out of character to make him say things like that. And frankly, this problem, this modern day textured dialogue, is applied to every character. It takes away from the fictional universe and makes it feel too much like here and now. There was that one line Seven said about taking a picture and she says it all wrong. It was like odd and out of place, but that was the objective, and that was really good. I liked that. It felt like Seven, and it was nice to have that kind of dialogue contrast with the 21st century they went to. The directing was all around pretty acceptable, and I'd say that the VFX for the most part were as well. The Photoshop pictures of Sung and his daughters, yeah, no, that was a little amateurish, but that's a detail compared to something like the ships and the space shots we got in the opening episode. Those looked great. The one thing that bugged me, and I don't know if this is directing, editing, or VFX, or all three at once, I don't have enough knowledge here, but the thing that bugged me was that every time we cut back to France and the vineyard with the cloaked La Serena crashed on the field, they felt obligated to have the cloak waver and shimmer like we're not idiots. We know the ship's there. We know it's cloaked. I understand it's an establishing shot just to indicate that the following scenes will take place at the chateau, but damn did it get redundant and overused. Also, the crash trail is like kilometers long. You think no one's gonna notice it, even if you cloak the ship? But anyway, I digress. The music, I will say, was quite nice. Granted, they kinda cheated in the final episode by jacking famous and beloved Star Trek themes from here and there, but those themes were well utilized and did complement the scenes in which they were placed, so like I said, the music ended up being quite nice. In terms of costumes, props, sets, I know a couple people say that the show is cheaply made. Perhaps they're right, but I don't see it. I think that the costumes are high quality, the sets are impeccable, and so are the props. This season had quite a lot of location shooting as well, and I enjoyed that. As much as I enjoy space and ship shots, I'm always one to really like seeing trees and grass in Star Trek. You know, this wasn't an alien world, this was just our world now, but still, I like my trees. Honestly, I feel like the production value on this show, in terms of sets, you know, props, that kind of stuff, I think it's really high. So, yeah. I'm pretty sure you see where this is leading back to at this point. It's not the production quality that was the issue. From a technical standpoint, I actually think that most modern Star Trek is doing a good job, especially Picard, considering it's free to have fun with its designs and aesthetics. It's defining this new era in universe. The cinematography wasn't bad. Really, it's ultimately the story being told that, quite frankly, isn't worth telling. Yeah, maybe that's a bit harsh, but like, hear me out. This season dives into Picard's past, and though it does do some surface level course correcting and canon restoration in terms of his heritage, bloodline, and family, I mean, it explains his accent among other things, the bulk of the Picard story being told is about the trauma inflicted upon him by his mother's suicide following years of mental health issues. I'm not saying that this is a story not worth telling. On the contrary, mental health is something I feel is very much swept under the rug in this day and age. Illnesses that are not physical or visible to the naked eye are often dismissed, and I'd say that when it comes to the mind, many of us don't take it seriously enough, myself included. Up until perhaps only a couple of years ago, I was so narrow-minded and short-sighted that I legitimately believed burnouts caused by work-related stress or whatnot were just some lame-ass excuse by lazy people to stop working. Boo! I know. But we grow, though. We learn. And so does our understanding of the world and its complexities. Perhaps it's because I went through some hard times myself recently. Perhaps I'm just improving, generally speaking, as a human. Whatever it is, I no longer believe conditions such as depression are a joke or to be dismissed. Yes, we all know people that exaggerate their conditions, fine, but that does not take away from the very real existence of mental issues. So yes, it's a conversation worth being had. It's a topic worth being explored and addressed, but not clumsily and with the lack of finesse that this season of Picard did it with. I don't think the portrayal of mental distress was exactly convincing. I don't think that the father's handling of it made much sense, considering he's a logical and functioning adult living in a time where help would clearly be available. And lastly, I don't believe this season or even the character of Picard was the time or place to cram in mental health as a topic, especially with so much more going on all at once in the season. Actually, Renee handling her depression, I think, could have been a more interesting element to lean into, and having the weight and the importance of the events of the season rely more on her inner handling to quote unquote save the day, rather than again rushing it with a quick scene between her and Jean-Luc where he sounded somewhat like a poet longing for his homeland. I think that would have been a more appropriate story to tell in terms of mental health. Small side note for the record though, I actually enjoyed that one scene they shared. If only it had been something larger, not just one singular element of many thrown together in this melting pot of a season that it was. Now, people that know me know that I'm not the fondest of time travel, but without getting into the, intricacies of whether this depiction of time travel was accurate or not, I will say that I did enjoy seeing the crew being displaced in time. However, for some reason, it majorly affected the way social commentary was depicted on the show. Everything became a lot more literal, a lot more explicit. Having the season set in the 21st century took away all possibility of allegory and metaphor. Star Trek stopped holding up a mirror to society and just showed us society as it is. I'm still trying to figure out if that was a bad thing or not, and this is because I can see valid arguments on both sides. I'm also kind of in agreement with the sentiment that we are now beyond the time for metaphor. The situation in the US and in other places across the world has degraded to an extent that, maybe explicit messages right now are the best way to communicate rather than metaphors. So I guess I'll have to get back to you on that. What I do think didn't work in the show's favor, however, is the amount of topics it tried to handle at once. Yes, all of these issues depicted in the episodes and many more exist together today, all at once in this real world, but for the sake of clarity, picking one or two and diving into them in particular is probably a better way of handling things. Ultimately, this season never really addresses climate change or illegal immigration or police brutality or racism or the handling of mental health. It merely points a finger at them while saying, what a shit century to live in. Each of these elements are but part of the backdrop that is the 21st century in which the season unfolds, rather than becoming a story element our characters need to problem solve together. Take Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. It isn't about everything terrible happening in 1986. It's about whales and their extinction. So there's one principal topic that we have time to explore by learning about it through a marine biologist. Because don't forget, Picard Season 2, while frantically trying to shame humans for everything they do today, was also trying to do a Borg origin story, a Picard backstory, and so much more. It was just too much. Too much! Too much being only half addressed all of the time. I guess the last thing I want to talk about and bring up are the returning characters and recurring actors. When it comes to the actors, I'll get straight to the point. It felt a little cheap to not have new actors play new characters. Now, I know everyone loves Laris and Ola Brady, but I would have been okay with them casting someone else as the Watcher, especially considering we also had Brent Spiner and Easter Briones returning as variations of their previous characters. I mean, technically Spiner returning as yet another Sung is kind of an inside joke, and so having Briones join in is kind of fun. It's a Sung family thing, but for a 10-episode run, having them two plus Brady felt like overkill. And that's not even mentioning, hologram Elnor. It must be said though, Star Trek has made it a thing to recycle actors. So let's leave this be and move on to what will probably be my two most controversial takes, if you're not already mad with me. I don't like what Picard has done to Seven of Nine, and I didn't like this new Guinan. Alright, okay, don't get your panties in a bunch. Let me explain or at the very least clarify. This has nothing to do with the actors. Jeri Ryan was amazing in Voyager, and she still is in Picard. And the new actor portraying Guinan is great as well. I have no beef with them. When it comes to Seven, yes, there have been improvements, meaningful ones at that, in the way she's presented to the audience, for example. As many have pointed out before me, she's no longer in a catsuit. But beyond this less misogynistic appearance, I feel like the character's substance has been severely reduced. Her exploration of humanity and rediscovery of herself were huge and beautiful journeys in Voyager, and instead of continuing that journey in Picard by delving into her decision to join the Fenris Rangers, or actually properly exploring the self-discovery that can be one's sexual orientation, her entire character is boiled down to Borg, not Borg. It's sad. Like, obviously, her history with the collective and her entire identity as a character will always be informed by her experience as a Borg. So using that as part of her story makes sense, and it is pretty much necessary. But all this season does is use her as some sort of Borg encyclopedia. As if being one drone out of trillions makes you an expert on the Queen herself, or even like multiverse queens. I don't know. Jeri Ryan is a talented actor, Seven is a complex character, and what we got felt shallow. It felt like a waste. When it comes to Guinan, boy is this difficult to articulate. Her appearances in The Next Generation always felt profound, whereas in Picard they felt more so surface level, accusatory. Now don't get me wrong, in The Next Generation Guinan also condemned and discussed things like slavery, but there was always a certain finesse or even crypticness to the way her dialogue was written. This Guinan, however, was much more explicit, less nuanced, less subtle. I guess that ties into what we were saying earlier about the time for metaphor being over, but I do feel like it takes a lot away from the character. And whether or not they're from the same past or an alternate timeline, in my opinion, this rather amateurish dialogue they gave 24th century Guinan made her almost unrecognizable as the one we've all fallen in love with from The Next Generation. And then also she screamed a drink in order to summon a Q. Like, what the fuck? Oh my god. Like, how could you sit there, you know, like, and watch that and be like, that's it, that's a wrap, we got it, bravo, beautiful, amazing, fantastic. It's terrible, it's dreadful. Alright, okay. Picard Season 2. I know many that loathed it, but just as much that loved it. It's clearly a divisive project. Where do you stand on it? I'm pretty impressed they managed to make Picard so boring. I was, however, very much unimpressed with what I was watching as I saw each episode time and time again. This season, in my eyes, is nothing more than a magical delivery of monotony. Dressed up in Star Trek wrapping paper. It didn't do the franchise justice. It didn't do serialized television justice. It didn't do the talent that they hired on all fronts justice. You know, sometimes things just don't work, and it's not because of this thing or that person in particular. Sometimes it really just is a case of an idea not functioning as well in practice than it does in theory, and maybe this is what happened here. I mean, look at my channel, for example, right? Doesn't that apply to my channel? Alright. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I do sincerely hope that you're not too offended by this review. I didn't like the season. I didn't like it. Those are my reasons. I'm sure you have your reasons for liking it if you did indeed enjoy it. And you know what? Neither me nor you are wrong or right or more valid than the other. I guess it's just how it is. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends. A huge shout out to all of the channel patrons. Thank you so much for contributing to this channel on a regular basis. If you do not want to become a channel patron, take a look down below. I added a, I think it's a, what do they call it? Wait, let me find this thing. It's a thanks button. That it's a thanks button. There's a little heart. You can hit the thanks button and give me a punctual donation if you wanna thank me. If you enjoy one of my videos in particular, go and hit the thanks button on that. It'll help me with some stats, I think, also. It helps me know what you guys really enjoyed and what you guys didn't so much enjoy. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully, I'll have a very positive review coming when Strange New Worlds finishes its first season run. I mean, I can already kind of tell that it's going to be a positive one because I very much enjoyed the first 3 episodes that we've had so far. I'm also working on another very peculiar video that I'll tell you more about sometime soon. And if you enjoy those little shorts that I'm putting out, or I put one out, maybe I'll put out another. But yeah, if you enjoy those, let me know too, because I did a lot of like musical stuff for Twitter back when we could do fleets and that kind of stuff with Starfleet Boy. But now Twitter have shut down fleets, so maybe I could do some YouTube shorts. All right, live long and prosper. You're the best.